What would you do if the person living next door, the one who waves good morning and helps you carry your groceries, had 29 bodies buried beneath their house? It sounds like fiction, like something out of a horror movie script, but that's exactly what happened in a quiet Chicago neighborhood in December 1978. While families decorated their homes for Christmas and gathered for warm dinners, a darkness so profound was lurking just below the surface that, when it finally emerged, it would shake the entire nation to its core. Imagine the scene. A cold winter night, police cars occupying a residential street, neighbors peering out of windows trying to understand what's happening. Officers enter the home of John Wayne Gacy, a well-respected contractor, a man who dressed as Pogo the Clown to entertain sick children in local hospitals, someone who threw elaborate summer parties for the entire block. He was the kind of neighbor people trusted, the kind of man who seemed to embody the American dream. But when investigators opened the trapdoor beneath his house, they discovered a nightmare that would redefine what evil truly looks like. 29 young men and boys, some still wearing the clothes they disappeared in, buried in the foundation of what appeared to be just another ordinary suburban house. The most terrifying part wasn't just the bodies, not even the calculated way he'd hidden them. It was what came after. When the detectives asked Gacy why he did it, perhaps expecting a breakdown, perhaps some sign of humanity or remorse, he looked them straight in the eye and said with a blood-curdling calm, "They deserve to die. I was doing the world a favor." No tears, no trembling hands, no crack in his voice, nothing, just a cold, empty certainty. That's the face of a true psychopathic killer, someone whose brain operates at a frequency most of us can't even imagine. And here's what terrifies people most. He's not alone. Right now, as you watch this, there are others exactly like him walking among us, hidden behind ordinary faces, charming smiles, and respectable careers. They don't look like monsters because monsters don't announce themselves. So how do they think? What happens inside a mind that can take a life and feel absolutely nothing? What you are about to discover goes beyond the crime scene, beyond the headlines and the courtroom drama. What you're about to discover goes beyond the crime scene, beyond the headlines and the courtroom drama. You're literally going inside the head of a predator. You'll understand the inner workings, the broken gears, the twisted logic that transforms a human being into something we can barely recognize as human. And look, if you've made it this far, if this kind of content interests you, if you really want to understand how these minds work, do the following. Leave a comment now telling me which psychopathic killer case intrigues you the most. Like this video so we know you're watching, and subscribe to the channel because the next cases will go even deeper into this psychological investigation. This is the kind of knowledge that can literally save your life or the life of someone you love. So, stay with me until the end, because from now on, nothing will be superficial. Let's start by destroying the first illusion that Hollywood planted in your head. Psychopath is not synonymous with murderer. In fact, most psychopaths will never kill anyone. They are all around you right now, in your office, at the gym, maybe even within your own family. They may be successful CEOs, charismatic salespeople, brilliant lawyers. Their brains work differently, but that doesn't automatically mean they are violent. The real problem, the catastrophic tipping point, happens when psychopathy meets other deadly ingredients: deep anger, latent sadism, opportunity, and then a true predator is born. But what exactly defines a psychopath? What separates them from us? But what exactly defines a psychopath? What separates them from us? The first characteristic, and perhaps the most frightening, is the total lack of empathy. When a psychopath looks at you, they don't see a human being with dreams, fears, a family waiting at home. They see an object, a tool that can be useful, an obstacle that needs to be removed, or simply nothing. It's as if you were a piece of furniture in the living room, something that exists but doesn't matter. This complete absence of emotional connection is what allows them to do unimaginable things without blinking. While you and I feel that tightness in our chest when we see someone suffering, their brains simply don't light up that light. There's no internal alarm. There's no voice saying, "This is wrong, stop now." There's only a cold void where there should be compassion. The second characteristic is the lack of genuine remorse. Now pay attention to this because it's crucial. They may cry. They may appear remorseful. They may give such a convincing performance in front of the cameras that even experienced prosecutors hesitate. But inside, absolutely empty. They are testing, calibrating, seeing if the mask is working. if the audience is buying the story. Ted Bundy, one of the most famous serial killers in American history, was a master at this. Described by those who knew him as friendly, polite, even handsome. He wore a fake arm sling and asked young women for help carrying books to his car. They saw a vulnerable man in need of assistance and their guard instantly dropped. They trusted him, and then they disappeared without a trace. Bundy knew exactly which buttons to push, which words to use, how to build a false connection that seemed real enough to disarm any suspicion. And here's the part that really chills the blood. They sleep perfectly well at night. Think about it for a second. Have you ever felt guilty for saying something rude to someone? Ever lost sleep because you unintentionally hurt a friend? Most of us carry that weight, that emotional responsibility that keeps us human. Now imagine accidentally stepping on a dog in the street. You'd probably feel terrible all day, right? A psychopathic killer murders a person, someone with their whole life ahead of them, family, friends, and goes home to sleep as if they just finished another day at work. There are no nightmares. There's no guilt gnawing inside, because for them, that person was never real. It was just something that existed and ceased to exist. Simple as that. This ability to completely shut down any normal emotional response is what makes these individuals so dangerous and, frankly, so difficult to identify before it's too late. But there's something even deeper going on here, something that science has begun to unravel when it literally scanned the brains of these criminals. But there's something even deeper going on here, something that science has begun to unravel when it literally scanned the brains of these criminals. The question that neuroscientists and forensic psychologists have been asking for decades finally has a concrete answer. What the hell is wrong with these people's heads? And the answer is as literal as it is frightening. Yes, something is physically wrong. It's not just learned behavior. It's not just childhood trauma, although that may contribute. We're talking about structural and functional differences in the brain that can be seen and measured through advanced imaging technology. Studies using functional magnetic resonance imaging have revealed that violent psychopaths exhibit significantly less activity in the amygdala, that small almond-shaped structure located deep in the brain that functions as our emotional processing center. It's the amygdala that fires when you feel fear, when you connect with another person's suffering, when that feeling of something is wrong here washes over you. In psychopaths, this region is practically switched off. Imagine a light switch that never turns on. They can see a person crying, begging for mercy, in absolute agony, and their brain registers this in the same way you register looking at an empty chair. No emotional response, no connection, just visual information being processed and filed away. But the story doesn't end there. The prefrontal cortex, that part of the brain right behind your forehead that acts as the handbrake of human consciousness, also operates completely abnormally in these people. It's the prefrontal cortex that stops you from punching someone who annoyed you in traffic. It's what makes you think twice before doing something irreversible. It controls impulses, evaluates consequences, and applies moral judgment to our actions. In criminal psychopaths, this area shows reduced activity or atypical neural connection patterns. That's why they are so impulsive, why they take absurd risks, why they never seem to learn from their mistakes. It's not stupidity, it's that the braking system simply doesn't work as it should. And there's an experiment that makes this even clearer and more disturbing. Researchers showed photos of human faces expressing intense fear and genuine pain to psychopathic criminals while scanning their brains in real time. Do you know what happened? Absolutely nothing. Their brains didn't react. No spike in activity in the areas related to empathy or emotional recognition. It was as if they were looking at a blank, textureless white wall, while an ordinary person would see those images and have an automatic, visceral response almost impossible to control. They were just processing pixels. Now, before you think this is an excuse, an easy way out for them, let me be very clear, it's not. Many psychopaths know perfectly well that what they do is wrong by society's definition. They understand the laws. They understand that killing is condemned. They understand the consequences if they are caught. The difference is that they simply don't care. They make a conscious choice to ignore all of that. And this cold choice, this calculated decision to move forward even knowing, is what makes them truly dangerous. So when you understand this, when you realize you're dealing with someone who can reason but can't feel in the way that matters, then you begin to understand how they hunt. So when you understand this, When you realize you're dealing with someone who can reason but can't feel in the way that matters, that's when you begin to understand how they hunt. Because yes, that's exactly what they do, they hunt. And the process has such clear, methodical steps that it almost seems like an operations manual. The first phase is silent observation, the kind you never notice happening. They don't choose randomly. They select with surgical precision. They look for someone vulnerable, someone who is often alone, someone who trusts too easily, someone whose disappearance might not be noticed immediately. It could be that new person in town who hasn't yet built a strong network of friends. It could be someone with weak family ties. They study you like a researcher studies an experiment. They learn your schedules, map your daily routes, identify where you are most exposed, most unprotected, and you have no idea you're being cataloged. The second phase is the approach, and this is where superficial charm comes into full force. He won't approach you looking threatening. He won't have that strange energy that makes you cross the street. On the contrary, he seems completely normal, polite even. He might be attractive, well-dressed with a confident smile. He makes you feel special with just a few well-chosen words. He offers help in a way that seems genuinely altruistic. He looks you in the eyes and says exactly what you need to hear at that moment. You feel a connection, even if it's artificial. Your guard, which should be at its highest, begins to lower. You relax, you smile back, and it's at that exact moment that you've already fallen into the trap. You just don't know it yet. The third phase is strategic isolation. Somehow he convinces you to go to a private place. It could be his car because he offered you a ride. It could be his house under some reasonable pretext. It could simply be a more deserted path he suggested as a shortcut, a place without witnesses, without cameras, without anyone to hear if you scream. And it is only at this moment, when there is no easy way out, that the mask finally falls. The smile disappears. The tone of voice changes. Those eyes that seemed warm are now cold, empty, like looking at a shark. The fourth phase is the execution. And here's what's most frightening. There's no panic on his part, no nervousness, no trembling hands. He acts with such absolute control that it seems he's following a memorized script. And in a way, he is. He's mentally rehearsed this plan hundreds, maybe thousands of times before. Every movement has been calculated, every second measured, every contingency foreseen. It's like watching a professional at work, except the job is murder. And the fifth and final phase is what comes next, and perhaps the most disturbing of all. While you, just watching this video, feel a knot in your stomach, genuine horror, he feels relief, or worse, pleasure, a sense of mission accomplished. And then he simply goes home, takes a shower, and sleeps peacefully. Jeffrey Dahmer would wake up the next day and go to work at the chocolate factory as if nothing had happened. Dennis Rader, the BTK, would send letters to the police boasting about the crimes, provoking, leaving clues as if it were a game. Israel Keyes buried complete murder kits all over the country years before planning to act in that region, preparing future crimes with the same mentality as someone planning a vacation. That's the level of coldness, of emotional detachment we're talking about. And this raises a critical question. How do you recognize someone like that before it's too late? If you want to continue understanding how these minds work and how to protect yourself from them, subscribe to the channel now, because the next cases will go even deeper. This is the level of coldness, of emotional detachment that we're talking about. And this raises a critical question. How do you recognize someone like that before it's too late? Because look, there are signs, real, observable signs, that can literally save your life or the life of someone you love. And the most important thing is that you don't need to be a forensic psychologist to identify them. You just need to know what to look for and, above all, trust what you're seeing even when it seems too subtle to be true. The first sign is excessive charm that appears too quickly. If someone is too intense right from the start, if they make you feel like the most special person in the world after just a few minutes of conversation, if they gain your trust with almost magical speed, stop and think. Healthy relationships, whether romantic or friendships, build trust gradually. It's a natural process that takes time, conversations, and shared experiences. Predators don't have that time. They need shortcuts. They need to disarm you quickly before your logic kicks in. So they bombard you with attention, compliments, and a connection that seems deep, but is completely fabricated. The second sign, and this one is pure gold, is a lack of empathy in small, everyday situations. Pay close attention to how the person treats others when they think they're not being observed. Do they mistreat a waiter because the food took too long? Do they laugh when they see someone trip or get hurt? Do they show absolutely no reaction when you tell them something sad that happened to you? These are giant red flags flashing in front of you. Because if they can't feel empathy for small, harmless situations, imagine what happens in bigger situations where they have something to gain. The third sign is constant and completely unnecessary lies. Psychopaths lie like they breathe. And here's the important detail. They lie even when the truth would be easier, more convenient, more logical. They lie for sport, for the pleasure of seeing if they can fool you. They constantly test how far their manipulation works. You catch them in a small lie, they create another, bigger lie to cover it up. And when cornered, they might even admit it with a smile, as if it were a joke, just to see your reaction. The fourth sign is the gradual but consistent attempt to isolate you from other people in your life. It starts with subtle comments about your friends. He says your family doesn't understand you the way he does. He creates situations where you have to choose between him and other people. Little by little, you realize you're seeing your friends less and less, talking to your family less and less. Predators need victims who are alone, without a support network, without anyone to question what's happening. The fifth sign is outbursts of anger completely disproportionate to minor situations. Someone cut him off in traffic and he stays furious for hours? Does a small frustration generate a huge, frightening reaction? This reveals a lack of emotional control, or in worse cases, masked sadism. He enjoys the feeling of anger. He enjoys seeing you frightened by his reaction. But there's one sign that surpasses all of these. An alert system you've had installed since birth. Your instinct. That strange feeling in the pit of your stomach when something isn't right. That shiver you feel even without understanding why. Your body, your primitive mind, detects danger long before your rational mind can articulate the reason. And here's the hard truth. Most predator victims admit later that they felt something was wrong at first, but ignored it because it seemed irrational, because the person seemed so nice, because they didn't want to be dramatic. But when you delve even deeper, when you really get inside their heads during the act itself, that's when you discover something that goes far beyond what any horror movie can capture. Let's dissect this into 3 distinct moments: before, during, and after. Because understanding their mental process in these 3 stages is understanding the true nature of murderous psychopathy. Before the crime, he is surprisingly calm. There's none of that nervousness you'd feel before doing something irreversible. He's planning methodically, reviewing every detail like an engineer reviewing a blueprint. And there's more. He's excited, maybe even thrilled. He's fantasized about this moment for days, weeks, sometimes months. He's mentally rehearsed every step, every movement, every word he's going to say. For him, this isn't a crime he's about to commit. It's a project he's about to execute. It's a performance he's finally going to present. After so much rehearsal, he knows where, how, when. He has plan A, plan B, plan C. He's reviewed the escape routes. He's thought about what to do if something goes wrong. It's a military operation in his mind, not an act of violence. During the crime, their true nature is revealed in its rawest form. Absolute focus, total concentration. There is no paralyzing fear. There is no guilt screaming inside their heads. There is no desperate inner voice that a normal person would have. That voice, screaming, "Stop now, this is madness, this is wrong." That voice simply doesn't exist for them. There is only technical execution, precise control, every movement deliberate, and many report a feeling of intense excitement, but not necessarily sexual as people imagine. It's an excitement for the raw power, for the absolute control they have at that moment over another human life. Dennis Rader, the infamous BTK who terrorized Kansas for decades, described a growing pressure within him that only eased when he killed, like a distorted escape valve. Israel Keyes, one of the most meticulous and terrifying serial killers in recent history, described the process as switching off the thinking brain and switching on the animal brain, entering an almost meditative state of pure instinctive action. And then what? Then comes the relief, the satisfaction of a mission accomplished, like you feel after finishing a difficult project at work, except their project was to take a life. But here's the detail that closes the vicious cycle. In many cases, this relief is temporary. Boredom sets in. The feeling passes. That hunger they describe gradually returns. like an itch that needs to be scratched again, and the cycle begins again. They start planning the next one, looking for the next victim, feeling that anticipation growing again. And now the most brutal and important truth of all, they don't regret what they did. Not really. They regret being caught. They lament the loss of their freedom, not the loss of the lives they destroyed. Ted Bundy, literally minutes before being executed in the Florida electric chair, was still trying to negotiate more time on his life by offering information about other crimes he had committed. There were no genuine tears. There was no real remorse, just cold calculation until his last breath. And when you fully understand this, when you truly absorb how fundamentally different this type of mind works, and when you fully understand this, when you truly grasp how fundamentally different this type of mind functions, that's when you realize the critical importance of everything we've discussed so far. Because look, after diving so deep into this abyss, after dissecting the inner workings of a human predator, some essential truths need to become crystal clear in your mind, and these truths can literally be the difference between life and death. First truth, murderous psychopaths exist right now. They are out there, and they are far more common than you'd like to believe. Consistent scientific studies show that approximately 1% of the general population exhibits significant psychopathic traits. 1%. That means that in a city of 100,000 people, you potentially have 1,000 individuals with these neurological characteristics. Now take that number and think about how many of them will find the right trigger, the perfect combination of circumstance, opportunity, and impulse that transforms psychopathic traits into lethal action. Not all of them, thank God, but enough to make this a real and present concern. Second truth, and this one needs to be said clearly, you cannot cure a violent psychopath. You cannot save them with love, patience, therapy, or understanding. They don't change. Their brain structure doesn't magically rewire itself. They won't wake up one day and discover empathy. They won't have a moral epiphany. They won't learn to feel genuine guilt. Believing that you can be the exception, that you can be the special person who will transform them, is a dangerous illusion that has already placed countless people in fatal situations. Accepting this reality is not cruelty, it's survival. Third truth, real, deep knowledge about how these predators operate is your best defense. It's not paranoia to know how they choose victims. It's not an exaggeration to understand the manipulation techniques they use. It's not dramatization to recognize the behavioral patterns that precede violence. This knowledge gives you a concrete advantage. It puts you one step ahead in the deadly game you didn't even know you were playing. It allows you to see through the mask before it falls. And the fourth truth, perhaps the most important of all, never ever ignore your instincts. Your body carries millions of years of evolutionary programming, specifically designed to detect predators. That shiver down your spine, that tightness in your stomach, that voice whispering something's wrong here is not a coincidence. It's your internal alarm system working perfectly, and you have full permission to act on it. You have permission to be rude and refuse that ride. Permission to run away from a strange situation without explanation. Permission to scream for help even if you later find out you were wrong. Your safety, your life, always, always, comes before social politeness. Because the ultimate and inescapable truth is this: John Wayne Gacy was the likable clown who made children laugh. Ted Bundy was the polite, handsome young man who seemed like the perfect son-in-law. Jeffrey Dahmer was the quiet neighbor who never bothered anyone. Real monsters don't seem like monsters until the moment the mask finally falls. And when that happens, because the ultimate and inescapable truth is this: John Wayne Gacy was the likable clown who made children laugh. Ted Bundy was the polite, handsome young man who seemed like the perfect son-in-law. Jeffrey Dahmer was the quiet neighbor who never bothered anyone. Real monsters don't seem like monsters until the mask finally falls, and when that happens, it's usually too late. But now you know exactly what to look for. You understand the patterns, recognize the signs, comprehend the mechanics behind the facade, and that knowledge can make all the difference between being a victim or being the person who trusted their instincts and got out of the situation in time. If you've made it this far with me, if you've spent these minutes delving deep into the darkest psychology that exists, it's because you understand the value of this type of knowledge. So subscribe to the channel, because every week I bring more analyses like this, dismantling criminal minds, showing you what really happens behind the crimes that shock the world. And leave a comment saying, "Knowledge saves lives," so I know you absorbed this message and that you're with me on this journey to understand the darkest side of human nature. Of course, if this content made sense to you, leave a like. It shows me I'm on the right track and helps me continue bringing this type of in-depth analysis. And look, there's a video right here that perfectly complements this topic, where I delve even deeper into specific cases that will impress you with the level of coldness we're talking about. Click and continue with me there, because the research doesn't stop there.